Hello, this is a brief tutorial on showing some modeling techniques to design parts of what would be an engine for a 3D animation class that I have. This is a set of objects that have been created with various methods, including a loft, renderable splines, and using shapes along a path and arraying fan blades here. Alright. So I want to show you how to recreate some of this. First we can start with the lofts that come from a path and shape. In the splines menu you can use a line and a shape or a custom shape to generate an object or a loft. So in the top view, usually I use a side view or top view, and what I might do is draw a line or a spline, and if you click and click again using the shift key, you can have 90-degree angles. Shift key will lock a 90-degree angle down, and let's leave it at that. When you right click, you will stop drawing the line. Right click, and then you can use a shape, whatever shape you wish, to loft along that spline. So in this case I'll use an ellipse shape, and I will use these two objects to create a more complicated object. That is what was done with this object, where I have this path which later can be moved but also edited to change the nature of that object. As long as you don't break the connection or collapse this object, you can still parametrically change the shape of the loft. For instance, I can change the radius and make that pipe thinner. So let's do that. Let's select this line, go to the Create panel, the Geometry section, and then in Compound Objects, Loft, Get Shape, and I can get that shape that we created. Now by default you'll probably see a higher density of segments, so you can easily go to the Modify panel to the parameters of the loft, and you can change the shape steps, which changes the cross section, basically the detail. You can also change the number of path steps and make it very angular, or if you have a line that is F3, if you have a line that is linear, you're going to get a linear loft. But if you come back into the shape and change the nature of the spline, you'll change the nature of the loft. F3, and what I can do, if you're trapped in one axis, you can hit F8 and change that. Okay, and now I have a linear line, and then it breaks into a curve. Okay, and that will remain, this loft will remain editable as long as you don't collapse it. You can even edit it like this and change the nature of the path this way. But it's a little bit easier if you maintain this shape until you're completely happy with the way that looks. Alright, so a loft with different shapes means that you can actually loft different shapes along a spline. So you can take a series of shapes. The caveat, the main caveat, is that they have to have the exact number of vertices around. So the way that this was done was with shapes that were drawn, and then a straight path was drawn, and I called upon each shape at some percentage point along the path. So I will redo that. In the front view I will draw a rectangle, And then in the top view, I will draw a spline. I'm going to move this little set of objects out of here, select them all, and hide them. So this is my rectangle, and I want to draw a line along which I will create a complex shape. I'm going to right click. Now this rectangle obviously only has 4 vertices. So what we could do is copy this by shift dragging, make a copy, shift drag it again, and I'm going to change the shape of that one. So under the modify panel, I'll add an edit spline, which allows me to edit the shape. Now this still does not change the nature of how still does not change the number of points. So in other words, I can still use this along the path. I could make something crazy like that, just to show you that this really is a very dynamic process, has a lot of potential. Okay, so what I'll do is I will loft this shape. I will loft the rectangle into this shape. So here's my line. I'm going to go back to the Create panel, Compound Objects, the third item in the Geometry drop-down, Loft, and I'm going to get Shape. I'm going to get this first shape, and you can see the little star there, the little yellow piece. And I'm going to move along the path, and you can't see it unless you're out of the shaded mode. So I'm going to grab this one, a copy. Now of course I could grab that one again, but this is more to set myself up so I can sort of see how the shapes will progress. I'm going to move along the path some, and then get shape, and I'm going to grab this one and move along the path some more, and I'm going to get this shape. Now depending on the way that you have drawn the line, the direction, and the direction of the shapes, you can get a mirrored shape. So what can be done is that you can draw the path in the opposite direction. So you could go to the top view, and instead of from the bottom to the top, draw it this direction and proceed to get your shapes that way. Or you can just deal with the shapes being in reversed order. So we could go to the compound drop down, loft, get shape, and start on this end, and that way it's more reflective of what you have designed there. You can go along the path, grab this shape, get shape, and then move down the path, grab a different shape, and now it's better matches the way these are arranged. So that is grabbing a series of shapes at different percentage points along a path. F3, and this is how this was done here, by using a short line and grabbing these. Again, they have to have the exact same number of vertices, so it's best to derive the alternate shapes from the original shape. Okay, so renderable splines. This I think is pretty cool. You can take any line at all, any line, and make it a renderable spline. So I can draw, click drag out, click drag, click whatever, click shift key, click drag, and so forth. And at first it is a thin line, but as soon as you go into the rendering drop down under the modify panel, you can enable in renderer and enable in viewport. Enable in renderer means that it will show up when you render it, and you can give it thickness. You can tell it to be that thick or thinner. You can give it a certain number of sides. 3 is the minimum. And you can make any spline renderable. So in order for me to get these objects made, what I can do is select edges along an object, go to create shape. Because the renderable spline was set, it automatically did it. But you might find that it's too high detail, or the thickness is really big, or these aren't checked. So once you use the create shape feature, you can isolate, Alt-Q, you can change the interpolation down to 0 if you wish, and that way you have a little bit less detail. You turn on enable in renderer and viewport, and then you can proceed to adjust the thickness and change the number of sides. Alt-Q. And now I have some interesting detail that perfectly follows this capsule. Create shapes. Alright, I'm looking at my text here. This is simply a text object that you can drop down and use for notes. This is great for leaving notes for somebody else, or leaving notes for yourself for the following day. Something like that. Right in your scene. Pretty cool. So the create shapes item is simply when you want to take an object. I'm going to put edit poly modifier on top of this shape, and I will grab that ring, that loop, and create shape. Notice that the default interpolation is high, it's 6, and I can very quickly, very easily make some detail around the edge. Around the surface of a 3D object. Alright, the last item is arraying fan blades, and what I'll do is just show you how this was created. So I started out with a hemisphere, and hemispheres are super easy to create. You can make a regular sphere and turn it into a hemisphere by putting 0.5 in there. Notice my detail level is pretty small, 12 segments. That was simply to give it some cohesiveness with the fan blades. The fan blades are a simple array. The way I made them was to make a box, give it some height, sort of center it there, give the shape some segments, and then what I did was I threw a FFD 2x2x2 modifier on there quickly. Scaled it. Collapse 2. That just allows me to perfectly make a taper. The extra segments in there are for me to be able to twist it properly. Instead of me trying to adjust the height of this perfectly, the 2x2x2 freeform deformation modifier allows a very smooth taper. The last thing I did was a simple twist, and if you don't get what you want, usually you have to change the axis. Okay, and I want the twist to start at the base, so that's an adjustment of the gizmo. F3. Okay. And the last thing I did, which I do not recommend for any type of game geometry, was to apply a mesh smooth modifier. Okay, not a good idea because of the extra detail. F3. And then a quick array. So let's say we want 10 fan blades. I think I did 12 before, so 12 into 360 is 30. Let's do 10. So we'll choose View, Pick, and we'll choose this hemisphere, which was derived from a sphere. We'll choose the last of these items. That way my axis is going to revolve around the middle of the hemisphere. So with this chosen, let's name it fan blade. I'll use Tools, Array. I want 10, and 10 into 360, of course, is 36. Make them instances so they can all be changed quickly. And I can now easily use the H key to find my fan blades, Shift key to get a series of them, use the select and link, click on one, you see all those lines, grab that, and now I have a new fan. Alright, that concludes this tutorial. I hope that was helpful. Have fun.